When Alec was just a brat who spent most of his time doing useless things like fishing around the capital, a flashy magician named Eldaz approached him and asked if he was interested in magic. At first Alec thought that Eldaz was Diddy's agent, but it turns out that he was really just interested in teaching him magic. Eldaz soon started teaching him how to cast spells by thinking about the friends he would make in the future and how he would need to save their asses from monster attacks. Thanks to his trauma-heavy teaching methods, Alec managed to learn magic quickly. Even then, he was disappointed that it took him a whole day to learn a single spell, and he didn't even listen to Eldaz mumbling that it takes normal people a month to learn that spell. Alec eagerly asked Eldaz to teach him another spell, but he told the overeager boy that one spell was enough for the day. Alec was not satisfied by that, but Eldaz remained firm on his decision, and they decided to waste the rest of their time by fishing. Alec kept pouting like a bitch the entire time, but then Eldaz stoked his ego by telling him that he had great talent for magic. He told Alec that even without his lessons, he would become a great magician in the future, and asked him to leave it to fate. Alec was shocked to hear this, and he asks Eldaz why was he teaching him magic in the first place. Before he could give an answer, a fish got caught in his line and Eldaz panicked because he had never caught a fish before. Alec laughed at him before helping him out, saying that a magician as skilled as him should know how to catch fish. Anyway, their life as a student and teacher continued as time passed, and Eldaz taught Alec a lot about magic. But then one day, Eldaz suddenly announced that he was leaving the capital. Alec was devastated by this news because that meant he would never meet his teacher again. But Eldaz had a final piece of advice for him. He told Alec that if he ever got the chance to become a court magician in the future, he should refuse to take the role. Alec couldn't understand what he meant by that and asked Eldaz why did he even teach him magic in the first place. Eldaz shed his gloomy expression for a moment as he talked about Alec's late mother, who did him a great favor when she was alive, and he was just trying to repay her son by teaching him. That was the last time Alec saw his teacher, and he worked hard to enter the Royal Magic Academy so that he could meet him again. There, Alec finds that Eldaz was once a student of the same academy, and he graduated at the top of his class, becoming a court magician soon after that. However, he was kicked out from that post in a few years, and Alec realizes why Eldaz told him not to become a court magician. Instead of following his advice, Alec decides to become a court magician so that he can the unfair imperial court itself. Long story short, he succeeds in achieving his goal and becomes a court magician, but turns out, he should have listened to his teacher's advice. Alec realizes this only when Crown Prince Regulus fires him from his adventurer party in the middle of a dungeon. He asks the prince the reason for that, and the blonde asshole tells him that he is being fired because he is useless. He talks about how he always risks his life on the front line to beat the monsters. The fire magician Lenny uses her spells to repel monsters, and their tank Ix blocks enemy attacks. On the other hand, Alec stays in the rear all the time, and he can only cast pitiful support magic. Regulus says that they don't need a loser like him in their party, and then further insults Alec, saying that he doesn't even deserve to be called a court magician. Alec tries to explain the reason why he only uses support magic, but Regulus doesn't want to hear his answer. Lenny also agrees with him, calling Alec a coward who doesn't have the guts to go deeper into the dungeon, and he is always holding them back. Ix silently nods in agreement as well, and then Lenny says that they have put up with him all this time because the king ordered him to join their party. However, now that the prince has decided to kick him out, she sees no reason for behaving politely with him. Regulus says that Alec must have gotten the top score at the academy by giving a handy to the professors for extra credit. He then asks him why does he have a dagger on him when commoners are forbidden from carrying weapons. Alec explains that they will need the dagger for the next floor of the dungeon, but Regulus gets furious at him. He takes the dagger away and grabs Alec's collar, telling him that no one on his party disobeys him. The prince then snatches away his court wizard robe, telling him that he doesn't deserve it. Alec is left devastated at this, and he has no choice but to leave the dungeon. However, despite being fired and insulted, he still wants to help Regulus and the party. He puts together some notes that can help Regulus tackle the lower dungeon floors, especially since he lacks magic power. The next day, Alec goes to the palace to meet the king about the same, but the guards stop him, telling him that he has been removed from the post of the court magician. He is just a commoner now, and commoners are not allowed to enter the palace without permission. Alec is shocked to hear this, and just then, Lenny comes there to rub salt on his wounds. She tells him to get lost and then walks back inside the palace, but Alec asks her to listen to him just once. He requests her to take the notes he has compiled to the king, because he was the one who assigned him as the court magician and told him to join the prince's party. Lenny takes the notes from him, only to tear them and stomp on them. She then orders the guards to kick the commoner, and Alec is left hopeless and jobless in the middle of the city. He finally realizes that he should have listened to Eldaz and not become a court magician, when suddenly he hears a familiar voice calling his name. Alec turns around and sees a redhead staring at him, and then she suddenly runs to hug him. He takes a moment to process what is happening, but then finally recognizes the girl as Yorha, an old friend of his from his academy days. They sit down to catch up with each other, and Alec tells Yorha the story of how he was kicked out from the prince's party as well as his position as the court magician. Yorha is furious to hear this, and she curses the kingdom that discriminates between nobles and commoners. Alec somehow manages to calm her down before anyone hears them. And then Yorha says that it is actually a good thing that he got fired. Alec isn't even hurt by her statement after all the bull he has been through in the past 2 days. But then Yorha reminds him that she once promised that she would make him join her party someday. Alec remembers that, and then Yorha reveals that she came to the capital for the same reason. She gets up and stretches her hand towards Alec, asking him to conquer dungeons with her. He is happy to receive the offer, but he has started doubting himself after being fired from his job. However, Yorha doesn't care about any of that. She tells Alec that the only person she wants to join her team is him, and no other magician can take his place. He gets emotional on hearing this and immediately takes up her offer, and Yorha gladly welcomes him to her a rank party lasting period. The next day, Alec leaves the country along with Yorha, and he dreams about Eldaz's advice of not becoming a court magician. A few days later, the news of Alec leaving the country reaches Regulus and his party, and they couldn't care less about him. Regulus talks about how Alec was hailed as a genius among the academy students, and he had high hopes from him. He thinks that they wasted their time because of him, but Lenny says that they don't need to worry about that now because soon a pure-blooded noble will join their party and they will become much more powerful. Meanwhile, Alec and Yorha reach Fizzle, the city of dungeons. Yorha tells him about how this city is the base of a lot of adventurers since it doesn't discriminate between the nobles and commoners. She is eager to get Alec registered as an adventurer quickly, but once they reach the guild, they are in for a shock. The receptionist tells Alec that he can't be registered with Yorha's party because they go beyond floor 30 of the dungeon, and he needs to be a member of the guild for 2 years before he can be allowed to join them. Yorha throws a tantrum on hearing this and asks the receptionist to make an exception for Alec, but she refuses. Yorha asks if her friend Kraja didn't approach her about this matter, and the receptionist affirms that Kraja came here and threatened them to let Alec join. However, the receptionists deal with nutjobs like her every day, so they didn't even budge. Alec and Yorha return empty-handed from the guild and take a break at a public park. As they eat lunch, Yorha tells Alec that they have reached floor 52 of the dungeon, and they can't wait 2 years for him to join their party. However, she is not one to lose hope and decides that if they can't go to dungeons deeper than floor 30, they will go to the shallower dungeons as warm-up. Alec is on board with that idea, and they immediately go to a low-level dungeon with insect monsters. Yorha uses her reinforcement magic to boost Alec's speed and darts around her, taking down the monsters with ease. However, things get serious when Yorha notices that the number of the bugs is not decreasing and they seem to be getting stronger. Alec agrees with her, pointing out that there must be something wrong in the nest that is forcing the monsters to act like this, but it is still under their control. As they keep fighting against the monsters, Yorha activates her shield and begins charging ahead to find their nest. Alec tells her that she is taking a big risk by doing that, but she tells him that this much is nothing. She says that he seems to have lost his edge, because if was the Alec of the past, monsters of this level would be nothing for him. She asks him to trust her and become his real self once again. Alec realizes that Yorha is speaking the truth, and he just needs to regain his confidence to get them out of this situation. He remembers Elda's lesson about how he will need to save his friends from danger, and using that as motivation, he decides to get on the offensive. Alec quickly takes down some monsters with fireballs and then defeats the rest with his dagger. However, a huge swarm of monsters surrounds them after that, but Yorha is not worried about them any longer. She casts a barrier around them, giving Alec the prep time to cast a powerful wide area spell that instantly disintegrates all the bugs. Once everything seems calmed down, Yorha pats him on the back, telling him that he has still got it. Just then, the ground beneath them starts rattling and a gigantic earthworm comes out of it. It attacks Yorha, almost swallowing her. Alec tells her that he will save her and she just needs to activate her shield. Yorha fully trusts him, and she activates her shield spell as Alec summons a fire serpent and attacks the earthworm with it, turning it to ash. Yorha is completely unharmed by the fire, and as she descends to the ground, she runs towards Alec. She says that he is still the strongest attack mage she knows, and their fight reminded her of their academy days. Back then, they were struggling against a 5-headed dragon that was too tough for their weapons, and its attacks were too relentless. However, Alec obliterated the monster with just one spell after enough prep time. Thanks to that, they were able to clear the 68th floor of the dungeon and created a new academy record. And now, Alec is going to join the same party of friends again. Back when they destroyed the level 68 boss and returned back to the Magical Academy, they were hailed as the best batch of students the Academy has seen in a long while. And even their midget of an instructor named Rosie knew that there was something different with these 4 students, as they seemed to blend in with each other and work together with unmatched synergy. They all returned from the dungeons with bruises and cuts, but with wide smiles on their faces as they just beat the all-time record of reaching and crossing the level 68 dungeon. And not only did they beat the record, they utterly smashed it, since the last strongest party was only able to reach till the 32nd floor. Finally, the day of graduation came when Rosie the midget released their scores, with Rain being 4th in class, followed by Kraja, who was 3rd, then Yorha, who was the runner-up, and finally Alec, who was the best scoring student by far in recent history, and the class valedictorian. They were all happy and full of hope back then, as they made fun of their instructor and got beaten up for it as well. While they were leaving the academy together, the remaining students were all jealously watching what they thought was the conception of one of the best parties that they would ever see. A party which is definitely going to gain a legendary status. Not knowing that Alec would soon decide that he doesn't want to pursue his career as an adventurer, and instead wants to become a court magician. His party members are stunned by this news, but they do realize that the job of a court magician is comparatively easier with much better and stable pay. Even though they were disheartened by this, they never blamed Alec for that and wished him good luck in the future, while Yorha promised that someday they would again be in a team together. In the present, that promise seems to be fulfilled as Yorha and Alec celebrate in a bar, where after only taking a single glass of booze, Yorha is completely blackout drunk. She starts getting angry about the fact that they are not allowed to go in the deeper dungeons yet, but soon ends up sleeping right there on the bench. Alec smiles at her, remembering how she was basically the same even during their academy years. Like a true simp, he puts his jacket on her so that she can sleep a little warmer. But one of the people inside the bar doesn't seem to like simps, since he is on a Sigma grind. He walks up to Alec, making fun of him for being a beta male. But Alec completely ignores him, since the man is a fan of Andrew Tater Tot. He obviously has anger issues, so he raises his bottle to smash it on Alec's head. But Alec uses a mana shield effortlessly to block the attack, before turning to face him. The man smiles at him, happy at the fact that he finally got some attention. He already knew that Alec was a court magician and claims that he wouldn't expect someone as elite as him would be roaming around trying to become an adventurer. This sudden change in his mood surprises, but what surprises him more is the fact that the big burly man takes out a card from his pocket, which turns out to be an adventurer's pass, and puts it down on the table in front of him. Alec is confused and asks what the hell is he doing, but the man simply replies that it's a token of apology for testing him with the bottle. But he also puts another condition that Alec must show him his magic if he wants to take the pass. Alec is still confused, when suddenly Yorha, the idiot, wakes up groggy and calls the man the guildmaster, asking what is he doing here. Alec is at a loss of word, wondering why would the guildmaster just give him a pass. But the man seems to be chill like that and hands it over before taking them to the training ground. He claims that this is the underground training area where he tests the parties who want to level up, and this is where Alec will show him his strength. Yorha claims that this might not be the best time since Alec has been drinking for a while, but Alec claims that he still has enough mana left to fight. The guildmaster formally introduces himself to Alec as Levi, and that immediately rings a bell in Alec's head, as he realizes that the guildmaster is a very powerful mage who used to lead an S-ranked party a while back. The guildmaster laughs, claiming that those are blurry memories now, and clarifies the requirements, which is very simple. Alec has to impress Levi with his magical skills, and that's all. With that, they both get ready for the sparring session, and Alec takes the first step as he uses his offensive Thunderbolt magic, which is expertly dodged by Levi, who in turns uses water magic and throws water balloons, I guess. Alec dodges them and realizes that the guildmaster has the upper hand in terms of range, so he will have to try some other strategy. He decides to turn the fight into a close quarters combat, but to his surprise, instead of backing off, Levy slams the ground with his fists and uses reinforcement magic on himself, boosting his speed a lot. He then dashes towards Alec, sidestepping him at the very last moment, and starts revolving around him at an incredible speed, before trying to land a solid punch, which Alec barely blocks with his mana shield. The shield, however, ends up shattering due to the sheer force of the blow, and he gets blasted into the walls. Levy is impressed by his durability though, claiming that not many people could survive that punch, but Alec walks out of the cloud of dust, claiming that Levy is indeed a true S-ranked adventurer. Seeing his nonchalant nature confuses Levy a little, who expected him to be scared and worried. But Alec claims that he is continuously forgetting that he is no longer the court magician, who are bound by a bunch of rules and are only able to use defensive magic. Since he is now not bound by anything, he can truly let go and use his full arsenal of magic attacks. Levy laughs at this and tells him to come at him full force, and Alec takes out his stiff wood once again, but this time he turns it into a magical blade. Levy gets ready for his attacks and again throws water balloons at him, but this time Alec manages to dodge the first one. Before slashing the next, he pretends to go on the offensive, which forces Levy to do the same, but this was all a plan, as when Levy uses his self-boosting magic and dashes towards Alec, he lays down a trap and explodes him with a thunderbolt before slashing through him to the other side. Levy stands still for a couple of moments, claiming that Alec truly is something else, as he already overpowered his magic. But to Alec's surprise, Levy isn't done yet and activates his trump card. He brings out magical gauntlets covered with dragon scales, which gives him an immense boost in strength, and with all that power, he rushes straight at Alec, who barely dodges the hit. The punches create a crater on the ground, but Alec is not ready to back off, as he then uses his lightning spell on him, but Levy simply shakes it off, completely ignoring the hit. Levy pushes through the attack and tries to punch Alec, who blocks the hit with his shield, but gets pushed back. He wonders what he could do next to deal with this monster, but Levy has more tricks in his bag, as he uses a special ability of his gauntlets, which heals him of any injuries. Levy realizes that the more he drags out the fight, the worse his chances of winning are. So he decides to push the attack and starts slashing and hacking at Levy, who manages to block every single strike, taunting Alec to do better than that. Alec decides to trash talk as well, which tilts the Guildmaster, who tries to land a powerful punch, but Alec dodges that and finds an opening to attack. This annoys the Guildmaster even more, so he pushes on with the attack, hitting the wall instead as Alec nimbly dodges beneath it. Levy doesn't give him any breathing space though and tries to land another attack, but Alec blocks successfully, before trying to land the winning blow. To his surprise though, the Guildmaster is a lot tougher than he looks and soaks the damage, before trying to land a double-handed smash, which covers the air with a dust cloud. But as the dust clears, Alec emerges out of it unhurt and tries to go after Levy once again, but this time when he strikes the Guildmaster, his stiff wood turns limp and he falls to the ground unconscious after completely running out of mana. Yorha immediately rushes towards him, using her regeneration magic to heal. Suddenly Rain appears inside the training ground, making fun of Levy for being an S-ranked adventurer and using his strongest skill on a lower rank person. Levy tells him to shut his trap, as he was merely testing Alec's limits and he would have passed him anyways. With that, Rain picks Alec up and takes him into a room where he can get some rest, while Rain sits on his legs for some odd reason. They talk about how it's been so long since they have been together like this, when the receptionist bursts into the room, claiming that she urgently needs the Guildmaster. Levy grabs her face and drags her out of the room with him, while Rain grabs a bunch of booze and asks Yorha to tell him everything that happened with Alec. By the time she was finished, Rain was shaking with anger as he realizes that the people in his party made him carry all their stuff, had them do their inventory, never let him use any magic apart from defensive one, and didn't even let him carry a dagger with him. He suddenly turns towards Yorha and asks how exactly did Alec even use defensive magic, since that was his job at the academy, and Alec was never any good at it. Yorha replies that he learnt it from scratch and worked at it till he became good enough, and now his defensive magic is almost as good as hers. He realizes that even after babysitting the crown prince for all that time, they still banished him by calling him worthless. He ends up shattering the bottle in his hands in anger, which wakes Alec up. He is a little surprised to see Rain here, while Yorha happily exclaims that the Guildmaster gave him the pass. This makes Alec really happy, as now they can all move towards the higher level dungeons as a party. But Rain tells them that it can wait as before, that they need to do something else. Alec has no idea what the hell is he talking about, but Rain explains that first they need to take revenge. For that they will enter the royal city and sneak into the palace, and then beat out of the prince and his party. Alec tells him that they are not going to do anything like that, and even Yorha claims that fighting other parties is strictly prohibited. Alec puts a hand on Rain's shoulder, telling him that having loads of fun on their adventure would be enough for him, as he doesn't really care or think about what happened to him at the court anymore. Rain suddenly claims that he has got it. All they have to do is become the strongest party in the world. That would 100% piss the crap out of the prince, and if their country is ever in any problem, they are bound to come for aid to the strongest party in the world, and it would feel really amazing to say no to their faces. Alec realizes that this is the best compromise that he could get, so he agrees on becoming the strongest party in the world. Meanwhile, in another room, an injured S-ranked adventurer named Krista is badly injured, as she breathes hard while the receptionist applies bandages to her body. The guildmaster doesn't look amused by this, since if the S-ranked party is in trouble, that means that the whole guild is in trouble. Krista tells Levy that her party is still stranded and they need all the help that they could get. The guildmaster immediately convenes an emergency meeting where he calls all the ranked adventurers and explains that they are going on a rescue mission on the 64th floor. Back in Alec's room, he ends up meeting Kreja after a long time, whose two personalities seems to have developed very nicely. She asks why he is not at the meeting, but Alec replies that he is not an ranked adventurer, so he stayed back. She immediately casts her heal spell, which completely heals Alec in an instant, which makes me wonder why the hell were they using bandages on Krista if they can simply cast heal magic. Anyways, Yorha and Rain enter the room as Rain starts screaming with excitement that they are going to go on a rescue mission. They catch Alec up on the happenings, claiming that the dungeon is a little different because on that floor, you can't use magic, so you are completely dependent on potions. And since the S-ranked party got completely wiped out, they ended up sending Krista alone to get help. Alec asks Kreja whether she was fine working in that dungeon since her speciality is healing magic, and he replies hotly that she opposed it. But the idiot Rain overruled her and used his veto to enter the dungeon. They start bickering with each other, when Yorha turns towards Alec, claiming that it should be up to him whether they go into the dungeon or not, since he is going to have the main and the hardest job dealing with the main floor boss. Alec agrees to the mission, and soon they head out towards the dungeon. And standing in front of the entrance, Rain claims that this is going to be the start of the legend of their party. They quickly reach the entrance of the dungeon, which has an affinity which doesn't let anyone use healing magic, forcing them to rely on potions and on dodging the attacks as much as possible. The target level where Krista's guild members are stuck is near level 64 boss, but before they could reach that, they would have to clear all the other levels, including defeating their bosses as well. Rain realizes that if they go level by level, they would be too late, but Yorha pulls out a magic crystal, claiming that Krista gave it to them, and with this, they could skip all the other levels and straight up teleport to level 64. Alec realizes that it must be a super important and rare magical item, but Krista is more focused on saving her teammates before anything else, so she even gave the other party these crystals to directly reach the target level. Yorha tells them that the level 64 boss is apparently an undead, which means that Kreja will basically be useless, and since Ha herself is a support mage, that means that the majority of the battle would depend on Alec alone. Rain tells him to save his mana as much as possible and let him deal with the small fry because he doesn't want Alec to run out of mana in front of the undead boss. Kreja agrees, warning them that from here on out, they would be literally fighting against death itself and should take it seriously since even an S-ranked party got wiped out here. Instead of being discouraged though, Rain feels more alive than ever and hypes them up, claiming that the story of their legendary party starts now. With that, Yorha tosses the magic crystal in the air and they immediately teleport inside the dungeon at level 64. They find themselves in a dingy cave, and immediately a bunch of undead skeletons rise up from the dead carrying shields and swords. Rain is not scared in the least though, and takes out his spear before lunging in for an attack. He starts attacking the skeletons in front of him, easily defeating them several at a time, while claiming that till now level 64 seems very easy. The others are still quietly watching though as a bunch of skeletons emerge out of nowhere and start walking towards them. Rain fearlessly jumps towards them, slashing and hacking anyone who comes near him, but Yorha starts worrying since Rain went out of range from her support magic. She runs behind him, calling him back, while Alec and Ja follow. Kreja claims that Rain should be fine since he has a very powerful ancient artifact, the piercing black spear, which is very difficult to damage and stays razor sharp at all time. A perfect weapon for a brainless idiot. Alec calls Rain out, asking whether he needs any help, but he tells them that this is child's play for him and keeps destroying any and all enemies that come near him. Alec smiles and starts walking alongside when suddenly he feels a weird presence behind him and instinctually shoots out a lightning bolt towards it. When the dust clears, he doesn't spot anyone there, and even Ja is confused as to what he is doing. He tells her that he thought someone was behind her, but it might have been a false alarm, when suddenly he decides to check something out and draws out his sword before blinding charging forward and slashing the air. Immediately his strike is blocked by an invisible entity, who then reveals itself to be the Grim Reaper. Rain smiles at him, claiming that Alec doesn't seem to be as washed up as he thought, telling Alec that he already knew that an invisible enemy was nearby, but he is no good at dealing with them. The Grim Reaper pushes Alec back and tries to attack, but he deflects the hit before jumping back towards Rain. Alec realized that Rain was confident in his abilities and trusted him as a friend and comrade to defend him behind his back. He realizes that he hasn't felt this kind of connection in years, which fuels him full of energy as he jumps up in the air with his magic sword and slashes through the Grim Reaper, killing it immediately. He turns back towards Yorha, asking whether she knew about it too, and she immediately apologizes for not telling him, while Krasha tells him to take it up with Rain since he is the one who suggested it in the first place. Alec smiles at Rain and promises to return the favor one day, while Rain replies that they would have to get out of this dungeon alive first. The four friends now huddle together, ready to take down all the enemies, and soon both Alec and Rain jump towards the undead skeletons, slashing and hacking them left and right, while Yorha reinforces them with magic. Rain is feeling himself as he uses fancy moves and kills all the skeletons that come in front of him, while Krasha uses her pinpoint accuracy with the bow to deal with the skeletons that try to sneak up on Rain. Now herself is forced to defend herself with her magic staff as they decide that the waves of skeletons is basically never ending, so Alec calls them back towards him, claiming that he will wipe them all out in one go. His teammates immediately huddle up behind him, while he casts a strong thunderbolt skill, which blasts the entire area with lightning, turning all the skeletons into charred crisps. Once they were safe, Rain turns around and asks Alec why he is only using his thunderbolt skill since he used to use several other offensive magic types when he was at the academy. Alec quickly comes out with an excuse and tells him that thunderbolt is the quickest spell to cast. That's why he is doing that. But Rain knows that he is hiding something, but decides not to push it further since they are on a time crunch. They suddenly hear a monstrous roar coming from the front, and they assume that it must be the boss room. Rain immediately gets ready, and after Yorha's reinforcement magic, he runs faster than Usain bolts towards the sound. Alec is impressed both by Rain and by Yorha's magic, while he and the other two girls follow Rain towards the end of the tunnel. Once outside in the opening, they find Rain sitting atop a ledge watching a giant monster chasing a bowl-cut adventurer all around the place. Alec immediately wants to save the guy, but Rain doesn't seem too interested, claiming that the mage running around is named Loki, who is the biggest jerk of a party called Rechroma. Krasha nods, claiming that Loki is a really crafty support magician. Alec, however, can't believe all this while Loki runs pathetically, screaming at Rain to help him, promising to haunt him every single day if he dies here. Rain, however, doesn't seem to care about his curses and watches with disinterest. But when Loki trips to the floor and it seems that the monster will get him, Alec immediately gets ready to jump into action. Krasha, however, tells him to wait and watch, since this is Loki's signature style. Alec watches as the monster walks towards Loki when suddenly a trap spell gets activated beneath it, blasting it with lava. Alec is shocked to see it, while Krasha tells him that Loki is a really crafty magician. The monster stumbles and ends up activating another trap spell, getting hit by several more fire blasts. Loki turns around and starts laughing at the monster, claiming that only an idiot would trip in a situation like this. But his smile soon turns upside down when the enraged monster decides to end it all with a powerful magical blast. Loki realizes that he is going to die right here, and would have been killed, but Rain ends up saving him at the very last second. Loki can't believe that he is still alive, while Alec and the girls descend down to face the enemy. The monster tries to attack Alec, but Yorha saves him with her magic shield. Alec tries to use his thunder spell, but to his surprise, the monster immediately turns around and starts charging towards Rain and Loki. Alec shouts and warns them of the oncoming danger and uses another thunderbolt spell which hits the monster directly, but as the dust clears, he realizes that his spell wasn't strong enough to stop it. Rain realizes that the monster is going to catch up to him, so he uses a last resort tactic and turns towards the monster, running in between its legs to juke it. He then throws Loki towards Krasha, who falls to the ground alongside the crafty support mage, while Yorha tells Krasha to take Loki to the ledge while they deal with the monster. Rain immediately gets in position and takes out his spear, ready for the attack. They wait till Krasha gets Loki to safety and then get ready for the final showdown. Yorha uses her magic to boost all the stats for Rain, who rushes towards the monster, dodging its attack and jumping up in the air, before delivering a spear thrust to its face. The monster turns out to be much tougher than he imagined, though, as it shakes Rain roughly, and manages to throw him off to the ground. Yorha rushes towards an injured Rain, but the monster immediately tries to crush him. Thankfully, Yorha manages to cast her shield magic, blocking the attack, giving Rain time to recover. Alec, on the other hand, seems to be pretending as if he is in an orchestra, and creates 5 magic circles around the monster. Loki comments that creating 3 magic circles is difficult enough, and for him to be able to create 5 at once, he must be a genius. Kraja replies that he can do much more than that, and to Loki's surprise, Alec manages to create 20 magical circles all at once. The monster tries to rush at them, but Rain jumps up its body and stabs it in the tail, giving Alec the time he needed to finish his spell. He jumps off the monster as Alec finally finishes his preparations and blasts the beast with a combination of thunderbolt magic, which shocks it in place. But when Alec tries to finish it off, surprisingly, the monster manages to sidestep and avoid the next attack. The monster immediately starts charging its own magic blast, but Kraja uses a spell to blind it momentarily, while Yorha casts a magic spell which creates huge links, trapping the monster in place. Rain uses this to his advantage, using his spear as a javelin, managing to spear the monster through its head, while Alec gets ready to finish it off. To their surprise, the monster is still able to move and decides to cast his powerful magical blast once again, but Alec stands there unafraid, as he readies the magic spell that only 2 people in the entire world know. One is his teacher Eldas, who created it, and the other one is himself, who learned it from Eldas. The moment the monster shoots its magic blast towards Alec, he uses reflection magic, returning the favor with double the intensity. The monster is really tough though, as he manages to survive this as well, barely clinging to life. The monster decides to use the spell once again, but this time Alec uses his reflection magic alongside creating multiple magic circles, enveloping the beast in a monstrous inferno, turning it into crypts, while Rain finishes the job by slashing the monster's head in half. With that, they celebrate their victory, but interrupts their celebrations, thanking Alec for the help, telling him that he knows about him as he is the court magician. Alec responds that he left that job, and Loki replies that it's a loss for the prince and his party. He then drops the bomb on them by claiming that the monster they fought was not the actual floor boss, but one of the sub-bosses who was stupid enough to chase him and got itself isolated. This really shocks Alec and the party, who wonder how strong the actual boss will be if the sub-boss gave them so much trouble. Loki reveals that the sub-boss is actually a necromancer, dressed as a knight in black armor. He claims that physical attacks don't seem to be all that effective, and are only good enough to buy some time. He then turns towards Alec and presents a magic wand with a cross at its head. Alec seems to recognize it, while Loki reveals that it's an ancient artifact, and the wand immediately turns into a sword in Alec's hands. Rain is not convinced, however, asking why would Loki give away such valuable item, but Loki simply laughs, claiming that he intends to use Alec as bait in the vanguard. They are all shocked and confused by it, but Loki explains that Alec looks like a weak mage, and if they put him in the vanguard, he would look like an easy target, drawing the boss towards himself. They can then set up an ambush, defeating the boss and bathe in the glory of defeating an S-ranked monster. While Alec and the others were fighting for their lives in the dungeons, the prince and his part is also in a dungeon on the other side of the continent. But unlike Alec and his party, who are expertly maneuvering through the caves, defeating enemies much stronger than them, the prince and his party look like a bunch of newbies as they run around the caves trying to escape a bunch of caterpillar monsters. The prince is confused because a couple of months ago, these low-level caterpillar monsters would have barely been a warm-up for him, but now they seem incredibly difficult to fight against. He screams at his mage to use her offensive magic against the beasts, but the thought of a mage is too scared to do anything, and starts crying. The prince gets pissed, calls them a bunch of low-life losers, and turns around to face the monsters by himself. He vows to finish them off with a single stroke of his sword, but when he attacks the monster, his strike bounces back on the hard skin, completely shaking the prince up. Without a moment's delay, the monster slaps the prince, knocking him to the ground, which forces his party to rescue him as they continue running away. While getting carried on his teammates' back, the prince thinks about how this doesn't feel right. His body feels heavy, his movements sluggish, and his sword feels incredibly heavy and difficult to wield. He realizes that this all started when he fired Alec from his party. Alec was an excellent court magician and used his support magic so effortlessly and effectively that the prince and his party always thought that they were just incredibly strong, whereas in truth, All their abilities were boosted beyond recognition by Alec. The prince, however, will never believe that and simply comes to the conclusion that Alec must have cast a curse on him in anger for getting kicked out of the party. When he returns back to the palace, he gets patched up by his physicians, and immediately after, he calls his personal mage Vogan to check what kind of curse he is dealing with. Vogan checks the prince for a while before revealing that he is not cursed at all. The prince finds it hard to believe, telling Vogan to recheck, as there is no way he would have so much trouble dealing with an easy level 30 monster considering that he has gone beyond level 40 floors. Vogan thinks for a moment before replying that the reason might be because he doesn't have any support magic now. This pricks the prince's ego as he haughtily replies that he has no need for any support magic, as that is utterly useless and only used by adventurers who are extremely weak. Vogan knows that the prince is a little head who doesn't know anything, but he refrains from speaking his mind, and instead asks whether Alec didn't warn them that the 30th floor might be a little difficult since magic reinforcement doesn't work there. The prince replies that Alec is a common peasant, and he wouldn't know anything about it. But Vogan doesn't really believe that. He replies that Alec was in the legendary party that broke all previous records and went down till floor level 68 before their graduation. The prince simply laughs at this, claiming that no common peasant could even dream of doing something like that, and tells Vogan that these tales are spun by the plebs to make themselves feel better. Vogan realizes that it's useless talking to a brain like the prince, but before he could reply, a messenger opens the door and instructs the prince to present himself at the court, since his father, the king, wants to talk to him on the matter of Alec, the former court mage. The prince gets up and leaves for the court alongside Vogan. He finds his father sitting on the throne and asks what he wants to talk about. The king asks the prince whether he remembers the court mage Eldas. The prince doesn't really have any idea about it since he was very young at that time. So the king tells him that a good while ago, a noble with the name of Eldas came to him as a court mage. His family was influential, so it was easy for him to be recommended and chosen as the mage. But Eldas was different from the mage who came before him. He constantly fought back against discrimination and told the king that they need to change the way this kingdom works. Angry at this slight, the king ended up banishing him and stripping him of all his titles and family name. Hearing this, the prince chuckles to himself, claiming that it was what the fool of a mage deserved, since even a noble can never talk to a king like that. His father looks at the prince with sad eyes, claiming that Eldas was different. He ended up enrolling in the Magic Academy as a commoner and aced his classes, graduating the academy as the top student and the valedictorian. Because of that, he was chosen once again as the court mage, but this time purely because of his skills and not because of his family standing. The king claims that Eldas kept bugging him for another year or two about how they should treat commoners better, as some of them have incredible skills, one of whom even saved his own life. But King never listened, and one day Eldas simply disappeared. The prince is confused as to why his father is spouting all this bullshit. But finally the king comes to his point. He tells the prince that it's time that they should reform how the kingdom works, since they need commoners with talents such as Alec. The prince couldn't believe his ears, replying that Alec was a useless pleb who was good for absolutely nothing. But the king simply produces a torn up parchment left by Alec with details of the entire 30th floor mapped with all the monsters found there and the exact way of clearing it. The king claims that only someone who has cleared the 30th floor multiple times will be able to write all the different ways of clearing it with such detail. The prince is shocked and tells his father that they can't ask for a commoner's help, as this is against what he was taught since childhood by the king himself. At this, the king looks down in shame, claiming that his own ways have been incorrect in a lot of ways, but he is going to correct them one by one. Starting from here, the people will be gauged based on their skills and strength instead of their class and standing. The prince stares at his father in disbelief before excusing himself from the court, claiming that he is sick. Back in the main dungeon, Loki is still plotting with the others about how they can deal with the floor boss. He tells Alec only to use the sword that he gave him and not any magic attacks at all. Alec, however, still doesn't fully understand the plan, claiming that the monster is immune to physical hits, so what's the point of even using a sword against that monster? Praja suddenly realizes that Loki wants to trick the monster into thinking that Alec is actually a swordsman and not a mage, so it doesn't think of Alec as a threat. But she doesn't understand the point of doing that, since the monster wouldn't think that much and simply attack anything that comes in front of him anyways. Loki, however, shakes his finger, claiming that he knows for a fact that this monster is intelligent and can plan his moves ahead. More than that, this monster is also a sword master. This shocks Alec, but also intrigues him, as he really wants to see a monster like that for himself. They finally agree on that plan, but the boss room is still a good distance away, which will take a bunch of time. But Loki has a solution for that, as well as he claims that they can simply teleport there. Yorha is horrified, claiming that teleportation magic is top secret, only used by the top officials of a country and no one else. But Rain knows that a sneak like Loki would probably steal it easily. He quickly starts drawing a magic circle, while Alec discusses with Yorha about how they will pin all the blame on Loki if anything goes wrong or they get caught using the teleportation magic. Alec still doesn't know whether to trust Loki or not though. Yorha replies that he is not trustworthy, but he is definitely reliable, since 2 years ago Loki led a raid on a high-ranking dungeon where he cleared it without a single casualty. Alec is surprised by that, and Yorha further claims that the party leader of Loki's group is also well known to be a good person, so it should be okay. That seems to put Alec at ease, who stands up smiling, ready for the final showdown. Once the magic circle is done, they all stand on it, and immediately the entire area starts glowing purple. Yorha is amazed to see that Loki is actually able to use the teleport spell. With that, he warns them to be ready and alert since they are going to be directly teleported into the boss room. They fall on top of Rain and immediately notice a huge dark knight looming in front of them fighting against a party of 3. The mage of that party tells one of them to run back and get more help since they need to rank a mage or even higher than that if they ever want to leave this place alive. The girl immediately runs back, while the other little fighter lunges towards the knight with an attack, which gets blocked, while the mage starts blasting his fire magic at it. This doesn't even seem to put a scratch on the knight's armor though, making the elf realize that he is completely outmatched here. Before he could think of a plan though, Rain sprints past them with an insane speed, thrusting his spear at the monster, but the knight blocks it before pushing it back. Rain gets excited as he realizes that this monster is incredibly strong, while Alec tries to sneak attack it from behind, but the knight jumps and dodges the strike. The boss immediately runs towards his new opponents, engaging them in a drawn-out back and forth of sword slashes and spear thrusts, while Kraja and Loki take the other 2 adventurers to safety, even after getting jumped by 2 fresh adventurers. The floor boss shows no signs of weakness and continues pushing the attack, forcing them back as his barrage of sword slashes continues to tire Alec and Rain out. Rain decides to try out a new trick and lunges at the monster with his sword drawn out, and just as he expected, the knight jumps up in the air to dodge the thrust, but Rain immediately pins his cloak to the floor with the spearhead, catching it in place, giving Alec an opening. Alec immediately attacks the monster and with a single well-placed strike, beheads the knight, whose body limps and falls to the floor. Just when they thought the fight was over though, the knight regenerates and stands up headless, and starts walking towards Alec and his party. Alec realizes that this must be a headless rider, and the huge monster that they killed before must have been his mount. The headless knight bursts into top gear as it attacks them at an insane speed, but Alec barely manages to block the strike, which would have otherwise killed them all. Rain quickly lunges into attack, and alongside Alec, they manage to push the knight away. The battle is far from over though, as the knight grabs its head and reattaches it on top of its body with a burst of untapped energy. The knight again strikes Alec, who barely blocks it, but still gets blasted into a wall. Thankfully, Yorha manages to use her shield, which saves Alec's life. He quickly downs some healing potion and tags in for Rain, giving him time to regenerate as well. They continue fighting their uphill battle against the undead monster, while Loki focuses on his master plan. Finally, the time comes when Loki reveals himself on the battlefield, the entire arena aglow with purple magical aura. This immediately freaks the knight out as it realizes that Loki is a mage, which is the only way it could die. The floor boss rushes towards Loki with an incredible speed and slashes him across the chest even before Alec has the time to react. Loki's lifeless body falls to the ground bloodied, but it all turns out to be his plan since it was merely an illusion. This put the monster at the exact place Loki wanted, trapping him in a bunch of icicles. Slowing him down, Rain immediately jumps into action, and with the help of a teleportation magic trap, he emerges right behind the monster, stabbing it before backing off. The other little fighter girl also drops in to help the others, but the knight manages to slip away only to get trapped once again. This really pisses the monster off, who becomes Spider-Man and scales up the wall to deal with the mage. Knowing that Loki is a slippery person, the knight decides to go straight for Kraja. Loki, however, wouldn't let that happen and immediately jumps in between, blocking the attack with his magic blade. Yorha immediately uses reinforcement magic and creates a bunch of chains to trap the knight in place. Even though Loki is not a fighter, he manages to hold the knight long enough for the spell to trap the knight, after which Loki falls off the top in a haze, completely spent, as he looks at Alec and tells him to finish it off with his insane magic. Alec immediately gets ready and produces a huge number of magic circles completely surrounding the captured knight. The little fighter is shocked to see this, as she has never seen anyone produce even 5 magic circles at once. Loki, however, realizes that something is wrong as Alec seems to be dangerously low on mana. He starts struggling to keep himself standing as he produces even more magic circles. He drops to his knees, worrying Rain, but forces himself to get back up and use even more mana to make sure he ends the monster in one go. After he was satisfied with the amount of magic circles that the floor boss was surrounded with, Alec decides to use his Thunderbolt magic. Buffed with an acceleration spell, the entire area erupts with lightning as the floor boss screams in pain at the huge magical output. Even this doesn't seem to be enough though, as he starts thrashing through the chains that were binding him, which surprises Rain, who has no idea how can the knight move while tanking such a powerful spell. Yorha realizes that they need to finish him off fast, as she won't be able to sustain her sealing magic much longer. Alec knows that even Yorha is at her limits and will collapse sooner or later, so he pushes himself to increase the magical output he was producing, but fails to do so. Loki observes all this from a distance, realizing that this is Alec's second huge magical blast of the day, and any normal person would have gone into a coma if he used half as much mana as Alec used in his very first fight. But at the end of the day, Alec is also a human being, and he seems to have reached his breaking point. Alec can't believe that he is about to let his party fail at the task, as he remembers how brutally he was banished from the position of the court magician. And even though he abandoned his school friends when they wanted him to join their party, Yorha still happily accepted him into their group. Both Rain and Kraja were equally good to him, putting all their faith in him even in life-threatening situations. This fills Alec with a sudden burst of energy as he starts moving forward, waving his wand as if he was in an orchestra as he combines all his magic circles into one and produces an incredibly powerful lightning dragon as his last-ditch attempt of defeating the monster. Loki and the others are shocked at this display of power. The knight realizes that he is in deep trouble, so he uses all his strength and manages to break through Yorha's magical chains and tries to lunge at her to finish her off. Thankfully though, Alec was ready for that, and launches his lightning dragon straight at the monster, who tries to parry the attack with his huge sword. But Alec's magic turns out to be too strong for the Dark Knight to handle as he gets obliterated in a single blast, leaving nothing but ashes behind. Alec immediately falls to the ground in a tired haze as his body refuses to move. But he is glad to know that his party will be safe from any harm, and none of them got seriously injured. Yorha appears above him and thanks him for saving their lives, which fills him with some energy, and he sits back up and asks Yorha whether she was hurt. Rain and Kraja arrive as well, thanking Alec for destroying the monster as all of them are safe because of him. Rain, however, notices that Alec has been hiding some of his feelings and what happened to him while he was the court magician. He tells Alec that they are all his party members and friends. He makes Alec promise that he must reveal whatever is going on in his head, which is proving the reason for his restlessness and change in behavior, since he used to be a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but ever since he got banished, he has turned into a sulky, brooding emo boy. Rain's words touch Alec's heart, who realizes that he has got true friends in this world and promises not to hide anything anymore. Loki also arrives at the end, claiming that he was the actual hero in this battle and deserves a little guac 3000 from the girls, which results in both Kraja and Yu beating the crap out of him. Meanwhile, the long-haired elf approaches Alec and bows down in front of him, thanking him for his help and saving them all. He introduces himself as well, the leader of the topmost S-rank party in the guild, Rechroma. Before Alec could even reply, the little fighter runs up to him and kisses him on the cheek, introducing herself as Belle. She immediately asks whether Alec would like to go on some dungeon quests with her alone, but Yorha wouldn't hear anything about it and tells her that Alec belongs to their party and he will only go in dungeons with them. Loki approaches Alec as well, claiming that he has seen many mages in his days adventuring, but he has never seen so many spells deployed all at once, and tells Alec that if it wasn't for him, they would probably all be dead by now. Rain overhears that and claims that Loki owes Alec a huge favor now, and Loki agrees. He discusses with Well and claims that they are ready to give him a recommendation. Alec is a little confused, but Well explains that if he wants to climb up to become an S-rank adventurer, he needs a recommendation from an S-ranked party, as well as an S-ranked guildmaster. He promises Alec that as the leader of an S-ranked party, he would happily give him a recommendation. They soon shakes hands with each other and go their separate ways, happy to be alive and to have defeated the floor boss that even the S-ranked party was having trouble with. Back at the guild, Alec gets handed a huge payout for his efforts, and the whole guild seem to be talking about Alec and his party defeating the level 64 floor boss. But Alec is too tired at this point and wants to get some good old rest for a couple of days to enjoy life with his friends. Before he could go on to do that, however, the guildmaster interrupts him, claiming that he has a visitor from his old job. This immediately creates a knot in Alec's stomach as he wonders whether the prince is here to make fun of him and threaten his party. But the visitor turns out to be Vogan, the new court magician. Alec greets Vogan, who immediately cuts to the chase and asks Alec whether he was planning to kill the young prince in the dungeons. This comment takes Alec by surprise, as he stares at Vogan with confusion in his eyes. But Vogan continues by asking Alec why he did not let the prince know how incredibly weak him and his garbage party is. Alec replies humbly that even if he tried, the prince would have never listened or liked those words, and Vogan can't help but agree with his point, realizing what a crappy job he has been forced into. Alec realizes that Vogan is the new court magician and tries to congratulate him. But Vogan doesn't care, as he claims that he is not a court magician, but a glorified babysitter to a spoiled little shit. Vogan claims that this job is a huge waste of his time and tells Alec that after he left, the prince tried to clear the level 30th floor with his party, but was badly wounded in the process. Alec looked scared, but Vogan tells him not to worry as the prince survived and recovered from his wounds. Unfortunately though, from then on, Vogan was commanded to escort the prince everywhere, and now he was even forced to escort the prince all the way to this city. This time Alec was at a loss of words as he asks whether the prince is also here. Vogan nods in agreement, telling Alec that the prince still has a lot of hatred for him and wants to see him suffer. Alec asks where the prince is and decides that he is going to have a conversation with him to settle everything once and for all. Vogan escorts Alec down to the training ground, where he finds the prince standing inside the arena waiting for him. He turns towards Alec and tells him that his father, the king, wants to change the way things are done in the kingdom, and he was left with no choice but to agree with it. Alec is shocked at this statement, but the prince continues his rant, claiming that just because he is going along with it doesn't mean that he believes in it. Nobles working with peasants and commoners is a fate worse than death, and peasants like Alec should listen to every single command of the elite nobles whose blood is pure and sacred. The prince grabbed Alec's shirt and starts crying, claiming that a peasant like him would never understand the pressure to be good enough to become the next king. And Alec agrees with it, as he retorts by saying that the prince's mindset is completely wrong. He tells the prince that if he ever listened to his advice, he would have been in a much better place and would have been a much stronger adventurer as well. This really stings where it hurts the most, and the prince tells Alec to shut his peasant mouth up as he draws his sword out, challenging the former court magician to a duel. He shouts at Vogan to keep his promise and persuade the king to revert his plans to make these changes and start treating the peasants like peasants if he defeats Alec in a fair duel. Vogan mogs for a bit and agrees to these terms, and immediately the prince rushes at Alec and tries to strike with his sword. Alec effortlessly parries the attack, but notices that the prince is using ancient artifacts in the shape of two small daggers. The prince tells him to face him like a man as he continues his flurry of attacks, which Alec keeps blocking, even without thinking about it. His thoughts go back to the moment in the armory when he suggested the prince to use two smaller daggers instead of a sword because it is heavier for him at this stage. The prince is definitely faster than before with the daggers, but still no match for Alec, who simply sidesteps, forcing the prince to grovel at the dirt. The furious prince gets back up and starts attacking Alec with every ounce of strength he had, while Vogan finally reveals that he is the one who forced the prince to use the daggers instead, as he can't stand idiots who have no idea what they are talking about. Alec continues to deflect all the attacks before pushing the prince back and drawing out his wands as he starts getting a little serious. The prince looks at the wand in disgust as he remembers how confused he was when he wasn't even able to clear a single level by himself. That's when he realized that the only reason he felt so strong was because of Alec's support magic. He refused to believe that and kept thinking about the possible reasons and curses which could have caused him to lose his strength. When finally Vogan revealed the shredded pieces of a plan that Alec made for him before leaving the capital. Not only did Alec perfectly illustrated every passage and described every monster and the ways to defeat him, he even took into consideration the prince's weaknesses and strengths and accordingly suggested the best ways to move forward. It was then that the prince realized that Alec was a true genius, but he couldn't live with that. He shouts at Alec to reveal his own artifact and show his true strength. Hearing this, Alec decides to end this farce and takes out his ancient sword before getting to strike. Just the aura alone was enough to make the prince piss his pants as he starts shaking, unable to move. Within a split second, Alec rushes towards the prince and swings his sword with all his strength, creating a huge cloud of dust, and when it clears, the prince finds him on the ground shaking. but completely unhurt as Alec struck the ground beside him instead. The prince finally breaks down, telling Alec to just end his life as he has amounted to nothing after all. He tries to provoke Alec by reminding him how he was treated in their party, but Alec simply laughs and lends out his hand to help the prince up. The prince seems to have cooled out by now and gets up on his own, apologizing to Alec for the way he was treated before, and takes out the court magician garb, handing it towards him. Alec stands there confused, but Vogan claims that the king wants him back as the court magician and takes out a parchment with the king's seal on it. Alec looks at it for a moment before asking whether it's an order, but Vogan replies that the king is requesting and not ordering. Hearing that, Alec smiles and declines the invitation, claiming that he is now the member of a party which he can't leave and would not want to return back to being a court magician. With that, the prince throws the garb at Alec and turns around to leave, telling Vogan to follow him as he needs to train some more. While Alec looks at the prince leaving the arena, realizing that today the prince changed fundamentally as a person, and now the kingdom might be in better hands. The next day, Alec asks his friends if they are free because he has a favor to ask of them. Everyone tells him that they are free, but as soon as Alec mentions that he wants them to show him around the city, Rain immediately starts crying that he got a terrible stomachache and now he will be spending his entire day in the toilet. Krasha also says that she just remembered an important thing she had to do and heads out of the room, telling Alec to go with Yorha. Yorha nervously laughs at her friend's exaggerated attempt of becoming her wingman, and then asks Alec if he wants to tour the city another day. He replies that he just needs one person to show him around, and Yorha excitedly tells him that she will show him every place she knows. They hit the market first, where Yorha tells Alec that Fizzle is a city of adventurers and he can buy weapons and potions almost anywhere. However, if he wants to find real treasure, he needs to have a good reading of the market. Yorha tells him to beware of the shady merchants who try to trick noobs, and then she ironically falls for a merchant selling pills that can make her look like Sabrina Carpenter. Alec grabs her hand and pulls her away, and Yorha's heart skips a beat. Anyway, they resume their tour around the market, and Alec says that they can let Rain or Kraja do the shopping. Yorha doesn't trust them, because the last time she asked those two morons to do shopping, Rain bought extra swords so that he could cosplay Zoro, and Kraja bought a giant teddy. She says they can't be trusted with the party shopping anymore, and Alec thinks the same about Yorha because she only bought candies and shady pills. He tells her that he will handle the party shopping from now onwards, and Yorha is glad to hear that. Shortly after that, they spot a cafe and Alec suggests they take a break. While they have a cup of coffee, Alec asks why Krasha and Rain seem to be so hostile against Loki, and Yorha tells him that it is a long story. She says that it started before Rain had gotten his artifact, and he was careless and sloppy as ever. He used to fling around his weapon recklessly in the battlefield, but once outside, he used to take really good care of them. Alec remembers that from their academy days because he refused to buy a new weapon because he cherished the old one. She then gets to the main part, saying that 2 years ago, they met in a rank party in the dungeon that was struggling against a powerful monster and decided to help them out. Coincidentally, Loki and Well were also there at the same time, so all of them decided to work together. During the fight, Rain used his body as a shield to protect one of the rank adventurers from the monster's attack, and even though he pretended to be fine, he collapsed midway to the exit. Loki and Well helped carry him, but even as he was unconscious, Rain held on to his spear tightly, hitting Loki's head with it with each step. Infuriated by this, Loki tossed away the spear, saying that it was too battered and Rain should just get a new one. Alec understands everything now, and Yorha explains that Rain was really mad back then, and to make matters worse, Loki told him to stop being a whiny puppy because weapons are made to be disposable. Yorha says that if Loki had kept his mouth shut, things would have been resolved quickly, but now, he and Rain don't see eye to eye. Yorha is frustrated by how things keep getting worse between them, but Alec is more curious about why Kraja dislikes Loki. Yorha replies that Kraja finds him obnoxious and feels that he only brings trouble wherever he goes. After that, they resume their shopping trip, reminiscing about their academy days when they had to pool their money to buy potions. Just then, Yorha spots a rare accessory called Elven Ribbon that increases magic power. She really wants to buy it, but finds that it is a little out of her budget. As she fidgets about what she should do, Alec decides to buy it for her without even bargaining, telling Yorha that she deserves the accessory because her magic keeps the party fighting. Yorha is really happy to receive the ribbon, and with that, they continue their trip around the city. They end their tour by climbing up the bell tower to watch the sunset, and Alec says that he really feels like an adventurer now. Hearing this suddenly makes Yorha upset, and she admits that she felt like taking advantage of Alec's circumstances when she met him in the capital city. Knowing that he was just kicked from his post and job, she invited him to join their party, but now she feels that it is not the right place for him. She tells Alec that he can change his decision if he has big ambitions, but he replies that it doesn't matter too much to him now. He declares that he has gotten over his past and he likes the idea of becoming the strongest adventurers with his friends. Yorha is really happy to hear this and tells Alec that he needs to keep his promise now. She threatens to send Rain to chase him to the end of the world if he runs away, because she knows he has the habit of keeping things to himself. Alec suddenly says that he needs to confess something and Yorha gets her hopes high. She closes her eyes and leans ahead for a kiss, but then Alec says that since he lost his bet with Rain, he is no longer allowed to keep things to himself. Yorha gets frustrated and embarrassed at this and turns away from Alec so he can't see her red face. The next morning, Rain pulls Alec's blanket to jerk him awake, telling him to stop wasting so much time on reading complicated stuff. Alec says that he has been trying to figure out something and Rain replies that the only thing he needs to figure out is his routine. He orders Alec to get ready quickly because adventurers are supposed to start their day early. As soon as Alec gets ready, he tells Rain that they should start their day the usual way, and he gets really excited about it. Their usual morning routine involves doing a mock duel with wooden swords, and the girls are not really a fan of their excessive energy right in the morning. Alec says that he has to catch up to Rain and others for the 4 years he didn't get to fight much. However, he is able to keep up with Rain without much problem, and the mock duel ends only after his sword shatters. He says that he was confident about winning today, and Rain tells him that he shouldn't dream of winning against him even in 100 years. He challenges Alec for a rematch, this time using their artifacts, but Yorha stops them before they can start fighting again. Just then, Loki arrives there, asking them if they need help from an S-rank adventurer in their morning training. No one really wants to talk to the jerk, so they start walking away. But Loki asks them if this is how they want to treat the guy who just gave them an S-rank recommendation. Everyone immediately turns back and Yorha asks Loki to show her the S-rank card. He keeps playing with her and then says that he will give it to her only if Rain apologizes for being a jerk to him all the time. Loki gets frustrated on hearing this, but just then, Well and Krista come there. Krista bonks Loki on the head for being a nuisance and then tells Yorha that they came here to deliver the S-rank card on the behalf of their guildmaster. Well tells Yorha that based on their recommendation and the approval from the guildmaster, her party lasting period has been promoted to S-rank. Yorha jumps in joy on hearing this, and then Krista tells Alec that as an S-rank party, they can now access Arcana dungeons, which are even more difficult than the 64th floor of regular dungeons. Alec is shocked to hear about this, and Krista and Well tell him to seek them out if he needs any sort of help because they still haven't repaid him fully for saving them. Loki decides to use the merry mood to get chummy with the girls and invite them to lunch, but they push him away before telling the guys that Loki wants to treat everyone to lunch. Alec and Rain agree to the idea because they are hungry, and Loki goes back on his words because he doesn't want to feed them. However, Alec and Rain are in the mood to eat for free today, and they drag him away for the treat. Soon, they reach a restaurant and start feasting, and Alec begins talking about how they are really an S-rank party now. Rain tells him that if he starts the self-depreciating crap about not being worthy of the party, he will give him a whooping right here. Alec tells him it is not like that and says they should get back to enjoying the party. He tells the waiters to bring them the most expensive liquor they have, and Loki starts to cry already. The party ends late at night and Yorha has passed out after drinking a bit because she can't hold her liquor. Alec says she must be really happy that they got promoted to S-rank, and Krasha tells him that it was not the only reason she partied a bit too hard. She claims that Yorha was happy that Alec chose them over the king. Alec replies that they are already over it, but Rain tells him that they still have some things to say. He is angry that Alec handled the issue without alerting him the last time because he wanted to break every bone in the prince's body for trying to take him away. Just then, the guild receptionist comes running there and tells Kraja they need her help to heal some people. Kraja follows her inside and begins treating the injured people, and the receptionist thanks her, explaining how they have too many injured people admitted right now. Kraja asks if they got injured in a monster raid, and the receptionist tells her that they were not injured by a monster, but by other people. Kraja is shocked by this, and the receptionist tells her about the Shadow Guild, who are a group of criminals that attack adventurers. She is shocked to hear this, and just then, the guildmaster calls her to another room to treat a critically ill patient. He reveals that the girl is Olivia from the party Nameless, and she was all by herself when the Shadow Guild attacked her. He leaves Krasha to treat Olivia, and she finds that she has been slashed all over her body. She realizes that it will be a lot of work to heal her, But just as she is about to start, Olivia grabs her hand and asks her where she is right now. Kraja replies that they are in the Guildmaster's office and tells Olivia that she was attacked by the Shadow Guild. Olivia suddenly lets her rage flow out on hearing that and starts cursing the traitor who caused all this. She tells Kraja to heal her quickly so that she can hunt down the traitor herself, but Kraja refuses because she can't let an injured person move so soon after they have been healed. Olivia grabs her shirt as she tries to convince her anyhow, but she immediately loses consciousness and Kraja starts cleaning her wounds before healing her. Kraja has heard Olivia's name because she is a famous sword user, and she wonders just who could have injured her so badly. She then starts healing her, and by the time morning arrives, she is asleep next to her bed. On the other hand, Alec is learning more about the Arcana dungeon in the library when a boy calls out his name. Alec asks if they know each other, and the boy named Leorg replies that he is really hungry and a good dessert will get him talking quickly. Alec lets his curiosity control his actions and treats the boy to some desserts before he reveals that he is the member of the S-rank party Nameless. Alec almost chokes on his coffee on hearing that and asks Leorg what does he want with him then. The boy tells him that he has heard a lot about him, and that is why he came here to invite him to join their team on a dungeon raid. The next morning, Kraja decides to pay a visit to Olivia once more to have a look at how she is doing. But even from outside, she could hear the sounds of someone counting in a rhythm. She pushes the door open only to see Olivia sitting on her bed with a wooden sword in her hands, practicing her sword swings again and again, even while being injured. Meanwhile, the Guildmaster is simply sitting there and watching her with an exhausted expression. Kraja immediately tells Olivia to lay down the weapon as she will end up opening her wounds all over again, and then immediately turns towards the Guildmaster, scolding him for simply sitting and watching instead of stopping her. The Guildmaster tells her that he tried stopping her, but she wouldn't listen at all, and he thinks only she can deal with a stubborn ass like Olivia. Olivia suddenly calls her out rudely, telling her that her legs are still not working and that Kraja should do her job and heal her legs quickly so she could get back to the job left undone. The Guildmaster turns towards Olivia and tells her to cut the bullshit and tell them who exactly attacked her. But Olivia firmly refuses, claiming that no matter how many times the Guildmaster asks her, the answer is going to be the same. Kraja decides to jump in between and tells the Guildmaster to piss off as she needs to dress Olivia's wounds now. With that, she kicks the Guildmaster out of the room and returns back to Olivia, checking her bandages and wrapping some fresh ones on her legs to make sure the injuries don't fester and heal properly. Olivia looks at her and asks whether she is not interested in knowing who attacked her like all the others. But Kraja remembers the agitation she saw in her eyes last night as she shouted about how she got betrayed by someone she trusted. She replies that she doesn't really care about other people's businesses and keeps to herself. That seems to ease Olivia a little bit, who immediately bows down in front of her and asks for forgiveness for the way she has been talking and treating her since last night. She claims that her injuries and problems made her weak, and she started acting up like a brat for no reason, even though Kraja helped save her life. Kraja smiles and simply walks her to her, kissing her forehead, which surprises Olivia, who backs off into the wall, claiming that she doesn't swing that way. But Kraja claims that it's just a soothing magic deployment technique which should relax her soon. Olivia suddenly feels the warmth on her forehead, which reminds her of the kiss she got from her mother as a child. She soon relaxes and asks Kraja for something warm to drink, so Kraja pours some tea for her, before leaving to get some snacks. Back in the training ground, Alec tells Rain and Yorha about his meeting with Luo from the Nameless party and tells them about the proposed raid in the Labyrinth dungeon. Rain smiles, claiming that Alec must have fallen for his charm, as sometimes even he himself wonders whether he is completely straight. Rain also tells Alec that Luo is an elf and is older than all of them combined. This really surprises Alec, who had no idea that elves can live that long, especially while looking so young. Alec further tells them that according to Luo, their party is soon heading for the absolute last floor of the Labyrinth dungeon. But due to some complications, they will be busy elsewhere, so they want Alec and his team to deal with the dungeon and quickly finish the final boss, retrieving the dungeon core crystal. Alec is surprised, as defeating the last floor of a dungeon means loads of money and fame, and asks Luo what's so important that they are leaving their hunt midway. Luo replies that they owe the Shadow Guild some payback, since they dared to attack Olivia, an S-ranked swordsman of their party, and they can't let that slide so easily. With that, Luo passes Alec the dungeon core crystal of the last floor that his party cleared and tells him to take it as a sign of goodwill. Rain tells him to hold up a little, as this doesn't make any sense. Luo and his party are sending them to the second last floor directly and have even given them the dungeon core crystal for it. Moreover, they will also deal with the Shadow Guild. That seems too good to be true. which Rain doesn't really trust. Yorha, however, is of a different mind as she claims that Luo might come off as a weirdo. But he is the only person who keeps his entire party in check and functioning to their best capacity. Rain doesn't really care about thinking too hard and decides to simply go with the flow and deal with the problems as they arise. He tells Alec that Kraja must be done treating Olivia, so they should pick her up and head down to the labyrinth dungeon. With that, they set out for the hospital wing, but just before they could enter the front gate, one of the receptionists rushes out and ends up bumping into them. She looks out of breath and claims that she was looking for them only as something seems to be wrong with Kraja. Alec and the others immediately rush in only to find Kraja in a drugged up state, barely managing to stay afoot as she stumbles through the hallway. Alec catches her before she could fall, and she explains that she was drugged by Olivia, who has rushed off the dungeon in order to take revenge on the person who attacked her. Rain looks at her in annoyance, claiming that Kraja was too good for that rude woman and she should have left her in pain for a couple of days. Kraja shoots him an angry look, claiming that she was hurt and if she fights now, she won't survive. Rain doesn't really care about it, claiming that Olivia is an S-ranked adventurer who should be able to take care of herself. They aren't obligated to go running after her every time she takes a wild decision. Kraja decides to stop arguing as she claims that the only reason Olivia ran to the dungeons is because Kraja healed her legs. So this is on her, and she is going to save her even if she has to do it alone. Alec and the others, however, are obviously not going to let her do that, and get ready to head into the dungeons, while Rain claims that they were already going to go there to clear the final level. So this would be just a little detour. With that, they soon arrive at the entrance of the dungeon, which looks impressive and confusing. Yorha explains to Alec that the dungeon is filled with teleporters, which can easily lead them into the wrong direction, as many adventurers get lost in the labyrinth caves never to be seen again. Before they could head inside, however, they get jump scared by Belle from Rechroma, who immediately sneaks up next to Alec, claiming that the dungeon is a scary place to get lost in, so Alec should hold her hands at all times. She claims that Luo sent her to accompany them as he heard that Olivia ran off into the dungeons all on her own. Moreover, Belle claims that she wanted to see Alec's thick and hard staff again casting huge magic spells. Yorha doesn't like anyone touching her man. She pushes Belle aside, claiming that their party is not like Nameless, and they actually care about team dynamics, so just the four of them would be better off to clear the dungeons. Alec is a little confused by that statement, but she explains that Nameless is technically a party, but they all fight like solo adventurers fighting at their own rhythm. Rain claims that it was only because Luo managed to sweet-talk them all to work inside a party that they formed one. Otherwise, they would have continued as solo fighters. Belle also chimes in, claiming that they only get together when they have to clear a dungeon, but apart from that, they act like they don't even know each other. Rain comments about how a rude woman like Olivia can't be friends with anyone anyways. But Belle tells him that he is wrong. According to her, Olivia might look like a jerk, but inside she is a real sweetheart with a soft heart. She remembers the time when she used to waddle around her, watching her train, constantly asking her for tips since she was the best swordsman of the region. But Olivia never denied her and always gave her useful tips to better herself. Yorha cuts in the story, wanting to somehow push away from Alec, and tells her to rush back to the guildmaster and tell them that their party is heading into the dungeon. Belle is a little idiot and agrees to that, but before leaving she asks Alec to make sure that Olivia is safe and bring her back from the dungeon. With that, Rain tosses Alec a friendship band, and soon they hype themselves up before entering the dungeon. Soon after entering, Kraja starts placing down magic teleportation circles in case they get separated, because they are going to be dealing with loads of traps along the way. Rain starts making fun of her for being so level-headed now, even though she was crying like a little baby for Olivia just moments ago. This pisses Olivia off, who drop kicks him in the face, knocking him to the ground, where he ends up activating a magic circle trap. Alec immediately tries to drag him out of it, but on the way, he himself steps on a trap, and they both get teleported to different places. Alec immediately finds himself between loads of piggish monsters who start attacking him. Alec wastes no time and starts landing his Thunderbolt magic left and right, swatting down the monsters like flies, while suddenly an arrow destroys a monster who was sneaking up on him from behind. He looks up to find Kraja on a ledge with her bow ready. Soon they destroy all the monsters of the room, and Alec asks how she found him. Kraja claims that she knew there were high chances of them getting separated on the way, but she wasn't expecting themselves to get separated before even beginning their adventure. She points at Alec's friendship band, claiming that it is a special magical device which connects two of them together. So wherever one of them gets teleported, the other one would not be far behind. She claims that Yorha and Rain have a similar one, and they would be just fine. With that, they start making their way through the nasty-smelling caves where they soon get ambushed by even more monsters. But Alec and Krasia make short work of them, quickly killing them all with their flawless swordplay. They continue walking through the winding caves when Alec suddenly stops, claiming that Olivia must be nearby as he spots her bloody bandage on the floor. Meanwhile, Yorha and Rain are running away from a horde of monsters after Rain opened a suspicious-looking door which was obviously a trap. Rain claims that the door was very interesting looking, so of course he needed to open it once. Yorha knows that arguing with him is useless, so she uses her earth-bending magic and creates a wall on which they stand and tells Rain to kill the leader of the monsters. Without even thinking, Rain jumps down into the monsters, and with Yorha's support magic, he manages to dash through all the monsters, flinging them left and right before making a beeline towards the leader, who Rain decapitates with a single slash of his spear. The moment their leader died, the monsters freak out and start running in all the different directions to save their lives. Yorha jumps down and pats Rain on the back, claiming that he did a terrific job, and with that they continue their adventure ahead. Back in the other cave, Alec and Krasia run at full speed to try and catch up to Olivia and soon find her sitting near an entrance, trying to dress up her wounds once again. She looks even more bruised and battered, but pretends that she is completely fine, telling Krasia to heal her. Krasia refuses, claiming that she is here to take her back, and if she heals her, Olivia will simply run away once again. Olivia turns towards Alec and asks whether he knows any healing magic he could use on her, but Alec refuses, claiming that he only knows offensive magic. He then sits down towards her, claiming that Krasia only wants to make sure she is safe, as she was freaking out all the while they were looking for her. This seems to soften Olivia, who turns towards Krasia, telling her not to trust people so easily, as she already tricked her once before. With that, she stands up, telling them that if they don't want to heal her, that's completely fine, but they better not stand in her way. Krasia isn't ready to give up so easily though, and tells Alec to block her way. Alec does as he is instructed to do, while Krasia asks Olivia what exactly she hopes to achieve here. She asks whether she is here after the Shadow Guild, but Olivia scoffs at that, claiming that the likes of Shadow Guild couldn't even touch her hair. She is after revenge, which is personal, as she got betrayed by the teacher who taught her everything, and who left her mother to die. With that, she moves ahead into a teleportation trap, telling Alec and Olivia to return back, but both of them jump into the circle, which transports them into a different area, where they find themselves in the middle of the monster's nest, surrounded by huge monsters all around them. Errol immediately realizes that this could be really troubling and curses his bad luck before taking his sword out and rushing in for an attack. Olivia tries to draw her sword as well to fight, but Krasia tells her to hold on and uses her magic to heal the stupid, irrational woman, while telling her to conserve her energy as much as possible, as creating teleportation magic circle takes a lot of time and Alec wouldn't be able to handle all the monsters alone. That was enough bullshit for Olivia, as she doesn't care about idle chit-chat. She immediately takes out her sword and jumps in the battle headlong, assisting Alec with a kill, while telling him that they should work together and get out of this hellhole. Krasia quickly starts using her magic to create teleportation circles, while Alec slashes through any smaller monster that tries to come in his way. His eyes soon lock onto a huge hobgoblin, who swings his club at Alec, barely missing him, as Alec dodges the attack and jumps behind him, slashing the monster in the back. He realizes that the monster is too big for him to handle alone, as he is unable to reach any of his weak locations. The monster swings at him again, and he barely rolls away from its reach, realizing the seriousness of the situation and how close he came to dying before the monsters could end his life. Though, Olivia jumps in and cleanly chops off the heads of not one, but two hobgoblins with incredible ease, shocking even the overpowered Alec. She sheathes back her sword and tells Alec that he hasn't practiced enough, as if he was a true S-ranked swordsman, monsters like these would never be able to catch him off guard. Meanwhile, Krasia continues to work on her magic circle and calls out to Alec, telling him to get ready as she is almost done. But to her surprise, the moment it was about to be completed, the magic circle completely shatters like my hopes and dreams. She is confused and tries to create another circle, but Alec tells her not to waste her energy, as this floor must have an anti-magic field, which means that they are all on their own and must fight their way out of this place without using any sort of magic. Olivia and Alec come back to back once again, and Olivia tells him that he needs to up his game if they want to have even the slightest chance of escaping this floor alive. With that, she immediately lunges forward, taking the head off the monster closest to her, before turning around and dealing with the other one in one quick slash. Errol admires her as he has never seen such a quiet and precise fighter before in his life. She is the complete opposite of Rain, who fights with all instincts and energy with no brain cells involved. He finally understands that to be an S-ranked swordsman, he will need to be as sharp and calculative as her, not wasting any energy with meaningless movements and being as efficient as possible. He tries to mirror one of her attacks and slashes the monster who tried to attack him clean in half. Olivia notices this and smiles at him, claiming that he is not that bad either if he can start improving his attacks mid-fight. They both soon erupt into a flurry of sword slashes as they deal with a continuous wave of monsters one after the other. But even though Alec himself is one of the best swordsmen here, Olivia tells him that he has loads of talent, but he hasn't mastered his weapon yet, which means that he isn't using his full power. She tells him not to try and overpower his opponents with sheer strength while treating his weapon like a tool instead of an extension of his body. Praja continues to try and locate the anti-magic field, but it is taking too much time, and both Alec and Olivia are getting tired by the constant fighting. Olivia tells Alec that they can't keep fighting the endless hordes of monsters as they will end up slipping sooner or later, which means that none of them will be able to survive. Alec comes up with a plan and tells Olivia that he can distract the monsters and keep them at bay, while Olivia looks for the anti-magic field and destroy it so they can get the hell out of here as soon as possible. Olivia agrees with the plan and immediately calls Praja out, asking whether she has the general idea of which direction the anti-magic field might be in. Praja has managed to narrow that down to one direction and points it out to Olivia, but claims that she will never be able to reach that point because there are so many monsters in the way. Olivia tells her to keep her commentary to herself and rushes straight in recklessly, taking down huge monsters along the way with single sword slashes and making it look easy. She continues to slash monsters left and right, while Alec decides to do her part and screams at the monsters to take away their attention from Olivia. He starts running in the opposite direction, and the brainless monsters start chasing him as well. Before he could think, however, Praja calls out to him, claiming that one of the flying monsters is gaining on him thanks to the heads up. Alec manages to turn back in time and parries the monster's attack, blocking him for the time being. The monster, however, turns out to be incredibly strong, but Alec grits his teeth and uses all his strength to push the beast back. The monster, however, isn't done yet and simply swoops down for another round, while a different monster attacks Alec, forcing him into an awkward situation. Alec manages to escape the situation by slicing the head off the body from the first monster before running in the direction of one of the larger hobgoblins. The idiot bird monster follows him blindly, hellbent on destroying Alec, but he uses this to his advantage and manages to steer the bird into the hobgoblin, hoping that it would kill them both. As the dust settles, however, he spots the bird still alive as it flies in the air with the head of the dead hobgoblin clutched between his claws. Alec realizes that fighting this bird won't be an easy task, but gets ready to engage it in a duel for as long as possible, giving Olivia the time she needs to find the anti-magic field. Olivia continues to slash through the monsters one after the other when she finally spots a monster mage who is using a special artifact which is causing the anti-magic field to take effect. She continues to decimate any monsters that came in her way and finally reaches the shaman, who doesn't even get time to react as Olivia's blade stabs through his back, and she destroys the magical artifact with her boots. She immediately calls out to Praja, who quickly starts channeling the teleportation magic once again. A little while later, she is ready and tells Alec that he needs to get his ass here as soon as possible as they are leaving. Alec decides to whip out his magic wand, now ready to cast some juicy spells, and uses his thunderbolt magic on the monsters in front of him, obliterating them completely. With that, he reaches the magic circle, while Olivia continues to fight against the monsters blocking her way. Alec realizes that she needs help and quickly uses his firebolt magic to kill monsters that were blocking her way, giving her a clear path which she quickly runs through to reach the magic circle, escaping the hellhole. When they open their eyes, they find themselves in an open area, safe for now, relieved. Olivia turns around to face Alec and asks him why he didn't tell her that he was a mage and not a swordsman. Alec claims that he thought she knew, but Olivia scolds him as no mage she has ever seen would run into a horde of monsters with a sword in hand. He helps her up from the floor, and Olivia thanks him for helping her, as she wouldn't have survived that floor if she was alone. Praja, however, is not very happy as she claims that healing magic is not perfect and only time can heal wounds properly. She claims that if Olivia continues to fight, Her wounds would reopen soon enough, and she would be in a worse condition than when she was healed. Olivia finally reveals why killing this traitor is so important to her, as she explains that he was the reason her mother died. She claims that when her mother died during an adventure, the man named Mel found her and became her master, who taught her everything she knows about swordsmanship. She trusted him and considered him like a father after her mother died, ready to listen to any and all of his commands until one day when he told her the truth. They were in a dungeon which she just cleared when Mel took his sword out and mortally wounded her. And as she lay there bleeding on the floor, he told her the truth about how he is the one who killed her mother. She wasn't able to believe that she had been looking up to the very guy who ruined her childhood and took her mother away from her. She shows the scar that he gave her, claiming that she must find him and deal with him, as that's the only way she could live her life. To her surprise, Alec puts his coat over her and claims that he would help her fight Mel the Blade Master, and even Kraja heals her once again, claiming that she will heal him no matter how many times she needs it. Meanwhile, back on the upper floors, Rain and Yorha are aimlessly wandering through the tunnels when they suddenly hear a bunch of people coming from one of the tunnels. These members turn out to be the Shadow Guild, who has been attacking the adventurers in the cave. The guy who was leading the group laughs at them and tells them to get ready to meet their maker. But Rain makes short work of them all, while Yorha binds them up completely. Rain asks the Joker with the sharp teeth about how he was able to defeat someone like Olivia, as he is not even 1% as strong as her. The Joker simply laughs, claiming that Mel, the Blade Master, defeated her all on his own in a single combat. This is concerning news, and Rain decides that they should find Kraja and Alec and head back to the guild with the Shadow Guild members first, and then decide how to deal with this Mel guy. Yorha agrees, but before they could do anything, the Joker guy activates a dungeon core, which causes the ground below them to explode, causing his own friends to die while Yorha gets knocked out by the blast. Rain tries to reach towards her, but the Joker manages to grab her before and runs away with her while Rain follows in anger. Alec and the rest hear the explosion and immediately follow it, only to find a huge hole in the dungeon floor. Olivia spots something and quickly descends down before throwing it back at Alec. He quickly realizes that this was the hat that belonged to Yorha. Meanwhile, Yorha finally wakes up to find himself in front of a hooded guy who seems to be the leader of the Shadow Guild. He claims to know her well, which confuses her, and she asks who the hell is he. The hooded man grabs her face, claiming that she will soon know what happens to brats who talk too roughly. Before he could do anything though, a voice from behind stops him. Yorha immediately figures out that the tall man with two swords must be the Blade Master Mel. But before she could think of anything, Rain descends down from the hole above them and stabs the Joker in the back, before running towards the hooded man to finish him off. To his surprise, the hooded man takes out a mana sword and manages to block his attack. While the Joker guy struggles to get up, he notices the magic bracelet that Yorha and Rain were wearing, and he quickly removes her bracelet so that she can't be tracked anymore. Yorha tries to resist, but the Joker punches her in the stomach, knocking her out once again, before running off with her alongside the Blade Master. Rain starts fuming and promises to kill him in the most painful way possible. But before that, he has the hooded guy to deal with first. They engage in a flurry of sword slashes, but Rain realizes that he needs to end this quick. He resorts to brute strength and breaks the sword into two pieces before stabbing the man through his stomach. The hooded man falls to the ground and Rain was ready to chase after Yorha. But to his surprise, the man doesn't die and gets up once again, chanting some spells which brings all the blood back to him, creating a new sword, as he tells Rain that now it's time for him to die, and there is nothing in this world which can save him. Rain realizes that this man could be problematic, as he has never seen magic like this before. He has known healers who could use healing magic to aid a teammate, but this person seems to be using something much more darker and dangerous. He decides not to give him any time though, and straight up goes on the offensive. He rushes at the red-cloaked man and slashes him with his spear before kicking him back. Blood pours out of the man's mouth, but Rain doesn't let him rest and pushes his spear through the man's chest, expecting him to die this time. But to his surprise, the mage simply laughs and stands up on his own 2 feet again. He slowly starts taking out the spear out of his chest, claiming that he has faced many idiots like Rain before and knows how thick-headed they are. So he decides to introduce himself to him. The man claims that his name is Gloria the Bloodmage, and no matter how many times Rain tries to kill him, he won't die. Even if his head gets chopped off his body, it wouldn't matter to him, and he would keep coming back. Just then, Gloria's blood starts glowing, and it seeps up his hand before becoming a blade. Rain is shocked while Gloria laughs, claiming that the more he is hurt, the stronger he gets, so just swinging that stupid little spear wouldn't be enough to defeat him. With that, Gloria brings his sword down with all his might, almost clipping Rain, who barely dodges out of the way, but is shocked by the speed and strength of the attack. Gloria takes advantage of this momentary distraction and slashes Rain across his body, causing a bunch of cuts. Rain backs off and dodges the next attack, but even he knows that he can't continue fighting like this and needs to find a way to get around this pesky magical technique. Before he could formulate a plan though, the Blood Mage uses his magic to create a long whip made out of blood and uses it to smack Rain across his face. Before he could even regain his balance, Gloria manages to wrap the whip around his legs and yanks him up in the air before smashing him down to the ground with an incredible force. Rain's spear flies off his hands while he stays on the ground, unable to move or breathe properly. Wondering whether this is the end, Gloria laughs at his condition, asking whether that was all Rain was capable of doing, claiming that he was nothing more than a punching bag which he could use to release his pent-up frustration. With that, he starts laughing like a maniac and tells Rain to get ready to say goodbye to the world. But just then, Rain manages to find every last bit of strength which was left in him and stands back on his feet. He tells Gloria to shut his ugly face as he is the one who is going to die today. Gloria looks at Rain's beat-up condition and laughs out loud, while Rain remembers Alec telling him to let go of his weapon sometimes. Rain decides to finally put that advice to use and calls onto his spear, which immediately starts floating and blasts straight at Gloria, who dodges out of the way, claiming that Rain can't expect him to fall for tricks like that. But the momentary distraction was enough for Rain as he closed in the distance and punched him straight across the face, knocking him to the ground. He remembers back the day when he decided to have a duel against Alec for the first time. Alec was a mage, but wanted to fight against Rain in a one-on-one battle without using any magic. Rain called him an idiot to think he would be capable of defeating him, but Alec was always good at anything he set his mind at. Alec took out his mana sword, and they both start clashing against each other in a flurry of sword strikes and spear thrusts. Rain was shocked at how capable Alec was as a swordsman and was at times being pushed back by him. But Rain was also not a person who would back down very easily, so he pushed twice as hard and continued the brawl. At one point when Rain raised his arm to hit Alec, the spear flew out of his hand and got stuck into the wall. Both him and Alec were surprised by that, but Rain quickly recovered and decided to use his fists to answer Alec's sword, which caught Alec off guard. Before they could decide the winner of the fight though, it was stopped by their teacher, who angrily told them both off and gave them detention in the garden to pull out all the weeds. After spending the entire afternoon pulling out weeds, Alec and Rain both sat down to watch the sunset, where Alec told Rain that he is really amazing at recovering from any situation and claims that he was caught totally off guard and for sure would have lost against Rain if the teacher didn't intervene. Rain smiles as he is snapped back to reality and watches Gloria get back on his feet. Deciding not giving him any time to recover though, Rain rushes at him once again and tries to land a right hook, but Gloria forms a crossguard and protects himself against it. Rain continues to smash against his guard, landing blows after blows, each stronger than the last, until finally Gloria's guard breaks and Rain lands 2 quick hooks on his face before landing an uppercut which sends him straight into the wall. Rain shouts at him to get up again, as if he gets stronger the more he stabs him. Then, instead of stabbing, he will punch them till he is half dead and unable to move anymore. To his surprise though, Gloria gets back up once again, and instead of rushing straight at Rain, he takes out 2 blood daggers from his arms and uses it to slash himself across the stomach. The blood rushing out of his body fuels him with more energy, and he creates a huge magic circle on top of himself, which slowly turns into a tornado ready to swallow Rain whole. Rain realizes that he can't do anything against that and accepts his fate. But to his surprise, Alec jumps in between and uses his reflection magic to completely reflect the entire attack back at the Blood Mage. Rain thanks Alec for his help, claiming that he would have been done for if he didn't intervene at the perfect moment. Before they could talk more though, Gloria emerges from the burning flame, hurt, but still alive. Olivia immediately realizes that this man is a blood mage which could be troublesome, but claims that she will try to deal with him quickly. Rain turns to Alec and tells him that he wasn't able to save Yorha, and she was taken away by the Blade Master and a punk right in front of his eyes. Esha is confused and asks what the hell could the Shadow Guild want from Yorha, but Rain claims that they definitely knew who she was, as the punk knew her name. He tells Alec and the others to go after Yorha while he deals with this blood mage here, but Kraja tells him to shut up and uses her healing magic to soothe his pain. Meanwhile, the blood mage angrily attacks them with his magic, but Alec manages to reflect them once again, creating enough distraction for both Kreja and Olivia to slip past the blood mage and go after Yorha. Gloria smiles at their trickery and tells Alec to stop using his annoying reflection spell. But Alec snaps back at him, telling him to stop using his magic then and fight like man. Olivia also throws Rain's spear back at him, so now Gloria is at a real disadvantage against the two friends. Before they could even fight though, Gloria falls to the ground, realizing how badly he is injured while Rain laughs, claiming that his magic is nothing against Alec, who could defeat him with his eyes closed. Gloria looks up at him with anger in his eyes and takes off his bandages on the arms, revealing a bunch of signs on his body. He uses a magic spell and unseals the magic from him, which converts him into a monstrous being, as his body gets ripped with muscles and fangs grow out of his mouth. With red magical aura around him, he rushes at Rain, and before they could even react, has him in his jaws, biting down hard on his neck. Alec quickly realizes what's happening and uses his lightning magic to push off the blood mage, but the damage is done as Rain lays on the ground unmoving. Alec quickly fires off a flurry of lightning magic attacks, but to his surprise, Gloria is so extremely quick that he manages to outrun lightning and dodge every single attack. Alec changes his strategy though, and instead of aiming his magic at Gloria, he creates a huge magical circle above him, raining down lightning from each and every part, guaranteeing hits on the berserk blood mage. To his surprise though, even this strategy fails as Gloria manages to regain all his strength through his blood magic and collects a bunch of blood to create two very sharp daggers, which he uses to send aerial slashes, forcing Errol to cover himself with a mana shield to protect himself and Rain both from some serious damage. The last strike breaks Errol's shield and Gloria thinks that he has finally pinned Errol down and can end him now, only to notice that Rain is missing from his spot. He quickly turns back around and spots Rain jumping in to attack him with his spear. But Gloria catches his attacks just in time and uses his daggers to parry every single one of them while pushing him back and even kicking him straight in the face. Rain realizes that he can't keep up with this monster as Gloria continues to outfight Rain and land kicks on his body every now and then, continuously pushing him back till he collapses to the ground once again. Gloria then turns back around to a shocked Errol, telling him that it's his turn now to watch his wimp of a friend die, the death of a loser, while he can do nothing but watch. To his surprise though, Rain is still not done and manages to stab Gloria in the stomach, causing it to burst with flame. He remembers how when he was a kid, he was friends with another kid who was actually a genius at spear fighting, always defeating Rain with an extreme ease of a prodigy. Rain tried day and night, practiced more than anyone in the village, while the kid never practiced, and yet Rain was never even able to come close to defeating him. What he couldn't do though, smoking did, as the kid ended up getting lung cancer, and instead of starting a drug empire, he ended up hitting the bucket and died. With the memory of that kid strong in his head, Rain continues to push Gloria back, landing hit after hit on his body, while Errol wonders whether this would be enough for them to seize victory, or will Gloria have some other tricks up his sleeve. Rain smiles at Gloria, who seems surprised by the amount of damage that he has just taken, but Rain claims that he hasn't even started yet. He turns towards Alec and tells him that they should show him their true combo, which no one has been able to withstand till now. Gloria is a little taken aback by that and wonders whether these two punks are bluffing or not. To his surprise though, Alec quickly produces a magic circle, but instead of the lightning magic that he has shown till now, he brings out his fire magic, boosting Rain's spear with a burning flame on top. Gloria can't believe his own eyes, as flame magic is supposed to be very destructive, and using it on an ally is unheard of. Rain doesn't really care about all that though and rushes towards Gloria at full speed, trying to hit him with 100 attacks all at once. Gloria tries his very best to withstand the attacks, but slowly gets overwhelmed by his speed. Rain steps forward and manages to land a devastating blow, slashing off Gloria's right arm clean off. Gloria is horrified at their strategy and shouts at Alec that if he continues like this, he is going to kill his own friend as well. Rain, however, tells him to shut his ugly mouth and shouts at Alec to send another flame blast his way. Alec smiles at his friend's tenacity and shoots another wave of flame directly at him. Rain gets completely covered in a whirlpool of fire and jumps up in the air and clashes with Gloria, who tries to fight back with his own magical weapon. Rain, however, is much more powerful at this point and manages to push Gloria to the ground. He doesn't give him any time to recover either and quickly rushes forward, continuing his onslaught while all Gloria could do is fend off any attacks he could parry against. But that is not nearly enough to survive against Rain. He manages to land another slash at Gloria, cutting his left arm from the shoulder as well. He thinks again about the boy who always defeated him when they trained and decides to honor his memory by proving that he would have been the best lancer in the world if he lived long enough. With a burning passion, Rain once again puts his all in an incredibly strong thrust, completely burning a hole through Gloria's body, who at this point is completely destroyed with both his hands missing, and even his torso gets separated from his lower body as it all falls to the ground in a jumbled heap. He turns around and starts walking towards Alec victorious, claiming that he will make sure that their party becomes the #1 party in the world. Meanwhile, Yorha finally wakes up on a completely different level and finds the ugly-ass Joker staring down at her. He makes fun of her by showing her the dungeon core, claiming that he loves to see adventurers putting all their efforts to defeat the monsters on all floors. And finally, when they get their hands on the dungeon core, he swoops in and steals it after killing them. He tells Yorha that none of her friends are going to see the light of day ever again. But before he could continue his monologue, the Blade Master takes out his sword and slashes him across the back, mortally wounding him, leaving him to bleed on the floor. He tells Yorha that he was tired of this man's constant blabbering and takes the core from him before coming towards Yorha. He calls her a seeker and asks her to lead her to Eden. Yorha has no clue what this man is talking about, so he explains that there are certain chosen people called the Seeker that are able to see Eden, which is a place where the dungeon core grants a holder all their wishes. Yorha tells him that she has absolutely no idea what the hell is he talking about and that she doesn't know about anything called Eden, while the punk on the floor speaks through a bloody mouth, cursing the Blade Master for crossing the Shadow Guild, claiming that they will definitely take revenge. The Blade Master, however, couldn't care less, and with a single slash of his sword, ends the punk's life once and for all. He claims that he doesn't care about anything else, and all he wants is to get as much combat experience as possible. But the problem arises when people start calling you the Blade Master, and no one is ready to actually fight you. At that point, the only way to gain more experience is actually creating more opponents to defeat. Just then, he senses something and turns around to see Olivia and Kreja. He laughs and tells Olivia that she should have stayed back at home after learning her lesson. But Olivia is too mad to care and screams that she will take revenge no matter what, and he won't escape this place alive. Yorha finally feels a bit better and shouts at the Blade Master to run if he wants to stay alive, as even Rain and Alec should come here soon, and then he would have no chance of survival at all. Mel simply smiles at that, claiming that if Yorha thinks that she can scare him and make him flee so that they could avoid another fight, then she is completely wrong. And his smile grows even more when he asks whether this Alec is Alec Egret, son of Arya Egret. Yorha is confused and asks how the hell does he know about Alec, but Mel doesn't respond, claiming that things are going to get really interesting now. Back on the upper floor, Rain goes down for the count, completely exhausted after the fight. He realizes that he will just be a burden to his teammates if he fights in this condition, and tells Alec that he doesn't think he would be able to fight anymore for now. Alec smiles and gives him a healing potion, telling him to rest, promising that he will save Yorha and make sure that she isn't hurt at all. Before he could leave though, Rain warns Alec that he needs to be very careful of this Blade Master, as he single-handedly defeated the dungeon bosses with a single slash, and remembers that once their class teacher was shouting at Rain for being reckless, and told him that if he ever came across the Blade Master, not to engage him no matter what. Alec smiles and tells him not to worry as he thinks before making any moves. With that, he promises to bring all the girls back safely and teleports, while Rain falls back to the ground to get some well-deserved rest. Back on the lower floor, Olivia rushes towards the Blade Master with fury in her eyes, as she screams that she will take revenge for what he did to her mother. But to his surprise, she changes her direction midway and jumps above him, grabbing Yorha and taking her back to safety. She then commands Kreja to go on the offensive, and immediately Kreja uses her Arrow Rain spell to create a bunch of mystic arrows all shot at once towards him. Mel, however, doesn't even flinch and simply uses his cloak to block and shatter every single arrow that was sent towards him. With that out of the way, he smiles as he looks at the three girls, but the girls have a determined look as well, and Yorha quickly uses her bind spell, catching Mel in a bunch of chains, while Kreja loads another arrow on her bow and Yorha enchants her bow with flame magic. Kreja then shoots her fiery arrow straight at the Blade Master, who is still bound, but instead of being scared, he simply smiles and within the blink of an eye, takes out his sword, slashing through all the chains and the flaming arrow as well. Kreja is shocked at this, as that was her strongest attack, and with Yorha's support magic, it should have been unstoppable, but this man sliced through her magic without any effort at all. Olivia immediately goes on the offensive and realizes that Mel already knew about her plan to save Yorha, and he still let her do it, because he wanted to see their strongest attack to gauge how strong or weak they are. She finally realizes why this man is the only person who is given the exception to form a solo S-ranked party when everyone else has to work in a team. She appears behind him and tries to slash at him, but it's of no use, as Mel simply blocks her attack without even looking and pushes her back. Olivia promises that she will be the one to take his head tonight and make him pay for all the suffering he has caused him. Mel completely ignores her and claims that there must be a very talented healer in Fizzle, as the wounds that he gave her would have given any healer a run for their money to try and heal. This shocks Olivia, who is surprised by the sudden change in his demeanor. Mel continues, saying that Olivia has found some good friends and claims that the bow woman with Yorha's support magic showed some real future potential. But that mask soon slips, as he claims that unfortunately they will never see that future, as they are little more than children playing at being adventurers right now. He turns towards Olivia and calls her a pathetic loser, claiming that he is disappointed in her weakness and asks whether she ever even learned anything from him. He tells her that sadly she won't get any more time to practice, though, as he is going to teach one final lesson, which is known as death. A chill runs down Olivia's spine as she remembers how her entire life he was like a father figure to her, teaching him everything about life, while claiming that one day she can even become stronger than him as well. This pisses her off even more, and she rushes at Mel with fury in her eyes and tries to slash him down. But Mel effortlessly blocks her before mercilessly smacking her in the face with the back of his sword. He wasn't done yet though, and follows it up with a devastating kick to her stomach, which blasts her off into a boulder. Kreja can't see this happen and immediately takes out her bow and shoots an arrow at him. Mel, however, easily grabs it and breaks it in his hands before telling Olivia that she is better off alone, as loneliness makes a person strong. With that, he turns towards Kreja and Yorha and launches an insanely strong attack, which was sure to kill them. But at the very last moment, Olivia forces herself to move and puts her between the attack, blocking it successfully from harming Kreja and Yorha, but ends up getting slashed herself and falls to the ground with blood seeping out of her body. Kreja immediately bends down to heal her, while Olivia tells her to conserve her energy and try to escape this place as fast as possible. Thankfully for them, Alec arrives at that very moment, immediately jumping towards Mel in a rage, swinging his sword as hard as he could. Mel catches the strike with his own sword and pushes him back. Alec lands on his feet and tells the girls to take care of Olivia before rushing back at Mel. Mel calmly stands there and draws out his sword as they both get into a back and forth of sword strikes, attacking and counter-attacking at every possible moment. They jump back to regain their balance, while Mel uses this opportunity to make fun of Olivia even more, calling her weak, which angers Alec, who rushes back at Mel, who simply moves out of his way. Mel calls Alec out, claiming that he is a magician, not a swordsman, so he should also use his magical abilities if he wants his pathetic friends not to die a horrific death. This truly enrages Alec, who creates a huge lightning dragon and blasts it at Mel. The Blade Master is a total Sigma though and stands his ground, parrying the dragon with his sword, and manages to hold it in position. Yorha couldn't believe her eyes that someone could even stand in front of a spell that strong, but Mel manages to slash through the dragon, nullifying his magic completely. Alec is in shock after seeing this, while Mel smiles as he notices blood dripping from his forehead. He claims that Alec is the perfect adventurer who can satiate his hunger, but calls him a weak magician as he couldn't find any desire to kill in his magic. AniRoll smiles, thinking about Rain and how he told him not to go too overboard. He turns back to Mel and tells him that if he wants to see his true power, then he should see it for real this time. With that, he starts glowing as he starts chanting his spell, which soon converts him into an LGBTQ+ member. Yorha is shocked that he would even try that, and explains that long ago, AniRoll came up with an original spell of his own which breaks his own limit, and he starts sucking in mana from the surroundings. This spell breaks all the barriers and exposes his true potential as a mage. With this, he can now control every single magical element: earth, water, flame, lightning, and ice. The only problem is that it depletes his life force and can even kill him if he overdoes it. Alec, however, doesn't seem to care at this point, as he tells Mel to bring it on, as only one of them is going to escape this dungeon alive. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.